Okay, so picture this. You've been tasked with cleaning tens of millions of dollars for Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel. But here's the kicker. You're not a criminal. You're a federal agent. We're about to dive into the absolutely wild, true story of Operation Sea Chase, and we're going to hear it from the inside, from the man who actually pulled it all off. So the whole thing revolves around this guy, Robert Mazur. He was a U.S. Customs agent who went, deeper undercover than anyone really thought was possible. His mission was called Operation Sea Chase, and it was this incredibly daring plan to go after the money launderers, the very people propping up the most powerful criminal organization on the planet. And this one sentence, this just tells you everything you need to know about the stakes. Listen to this. This wasn't just some job, you know? It was a life or death infiltration. One wrong move, and that's it. It's over. And that threat, it's so real, it follows him to this very day. All right, so to get inside, Mazur couldn't just, walk in and ask to launder money. That's not how it works. He had to become someone else, completely. A man the cartel would actually trust with their fortunes. And this strategy here was just brilliant. Mazur built his alias, this guy, Robert Musella, on a foundation of truth. He used his real hometown, his real business background, all to make the persona feel natural and easy to live in. But then he layered on all the excess. We're talking the Rolls-Royce, the private jet, the kind of insane lifestyle that just screams successful and probably very corrupt financier. Now, this whole persona, it wasn't just for show. It was backed by a portfolio of real, legit-looking, sophisticated businesses. Think about it, a jewelry chain. That's a fantastic front, right? Tons of cash flowing through it every single day. An investment firm, a brokerage with a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. All of this gave him the perfect excuse for handling millions. It was an absolutely airtight cover. But here's the really crucial part. Mazur didn't chase the cartel. No, he made them chase him. He and his partner, they started spreading these rumors about a mysterious boss, this guy Mazella, who stayed in the shadows but could open up, quote, rivers of money. For 6 whole months, they just built the legend, making the cartel totally desperate to meet the man behind it all. So, Musella is in. He's trusted. And now we get to the main event. How do you actually wash tens of millions of dollars in drug money? Let's break down the mechanics of this whole underground economy. Okay, so it all revolves around something called the black money market. The easiest way to think of it is like an illegal international currency exchange. See, the traffickers have this huge supply of US dollars from drug sales, right? But they need to turn them into pesos back home in Colombia. And Mazur, as Musella, he became the perfect middleman in this whole system. And, the basic process was surprisingly simple. First, Mazur would take the cartel's cash. Then he'd find legitimate Colombian importers who needed dollars for their business. He'd sell them the cartel's dollars at a discount, like say 10%, which is a total bargain compared to what the central bank was charging. So the importers got cheap dollars, the cartel got their pesos, and Musella? He took a nice cut. But, for the really big money, you need something a bit more sophisticated. And that's where a technique called layering comes in. The goal here is to create a financial paper trail so complex, so international, that it becomes an absolute nightmare for law enforcement to follow. You're just building layer after layer of confusion around where that money actually came from. And this was Musella's favorite route. Here's how it worked. The cash would get deposited as a certificate of deposit in Luxembourg. Okay, step 1. Then, that CD was used as collateral for a totally clean-looking loan in Paris. Step 2. The loan money was then wired to an account in Panama. By the time it finally reached the cartel, its connection to drug money was, well, it was almost impossible to prove. Now, that high finance stuff is pretty impressive, right? But it's not the only way they did things. Sometimes the cartel needed a more grassroots approach to get cash off the street and into the system to begin with. So, enter the Smurfs. And no, not the little blue guys. We're talking about an army of people. Their job is to take a huge pile of cash, let's say $500,000, and break it down into tiny, non-suspicious amounts. So they'll go out and buy hundreds of money orders for weird amounts like $987.25, always under that legal reporting threshold. And just like that, a whole trunk full of cash becomes a small stock of paper, which is way, way easier and safer to move around. So as Mazur was getting more and more trust, he started getting this critical inside info. One trafficker, a guy who actually met with Escobar himself, gave him this chillingly specific warning about how to spot undercover federal agents. They had a name for them, Los Feos, the ugly ones. I mean, this was absolutely critical intelligence. Mazur knew he had to warn his own surveillance team, and fast, because if they got spotted, the entire operation, and yeah, his life, would be totally compromised. And here is the unbelievable twist. He walks in to brief his team, and they're all wearing the exact unofficial uniform the cartel was looking for. Jeans, pullover shirts, fanny packs, the whole deal. I mean, despite his warnings, their egos got in the way. They were spotted, the surveillance was burned, and a furious cartel manager is screaming over the phone that Mazzella had to be a Fed. Okay, so after 2 years of just incredible, nonstop tension, it was time to end the operation. But you got a problem. How do you arrest these untouchable international criminals who never ever step foot in your country? Well, the answer was pure genius. They staged a fake wedding. Can you believe it? They leveraged the deep personal trust that Mazur had built up as Musella and invited everyone, the traffickers, the corrupt bankers, even their families, to his big wedding in Florida. They were all arrested at the bachelor party the night before. Everyone was in just total, complete disbelief. And the results were just staggering. Operation Sea Chase led to the collection of $600 million in fines and forfeitures. That is a massive financial blow to the entire criminal enterprise. And they didn't just get the money, they got the people. 85 key figures, everyone from cartel managers to senior officials at the 7th largest private bank in the world, were all taken off the board. And of course, the operation had a direct impact on the streets. They seized about 3,000 pounds of cocaine, completely disrupting the cartel's supply chain. So the takedown was a massive, massive success. But for Robert Mazur, the story doesn't just end there with high fives and celebration. No, it ends with this quiet, profound reflection on what it all really meant. And this really reveals the psychological cost of going that deep undercover. Mazur realized he had become a master at the very crimes he was fighting against. While his whole team was out celebrating, he just sat by a river, trying to process the surreal fact that he was getting awards for the exact same actions that were sending all these other guys to prison. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial question. Look, Mazur's story is from the late 80s, but this problem hasn't gone away. He argues that the system itself is still flawed, that the sales side of banking is incentivized to just look the other way. So the question he leaves us with is a really powerful one. Are we truly doing enough to stop the next generation of financial criminals?